Hi, I'd like to answer a question I've been asked an awful lot. Why Weka? The great thing about Weka is we solve the world's big problems. But let me start off by saying, but some people have never heard the word Weka, maybe not even know the company Weka or even what we do. So let me try to answer those. The word Weka comes as a derivative similar to what Google did. I was sitting at the front row at the George Gilder conference about 20 years ago. It's a gentleman named Eric I introduced myself to. I didn't know who he was. I just knew him as Eric. He knew me as Kenny. Anyways, he gets introduced. He was given the keynote. Who'd guess? He goes up stage and says, "Hi, I'm Eric Schmidt. I'm this, you might know me as the CEO of Novell." And I knew that. Everyone knew that. We kind of nodding authoritatively. There was a few thousand people in the audience. Then he says, "I'm also going to be forever known as the first CEO of Google." We all laugh. What the heck is Google? It's a name we never heard before. I think a lot of people know this, but it's actually a misspelling and a mispronunciation of 10 to the 100th power. The theory was that it would future-proof itself. Everything in the world, all the information could fit into Google, 10 to the 100th power. That's where Weka's at. So if you go kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, all the way up, 10 to the 100th power, of course, is Google, or a misspelling and mispronunciation of Google, which they've done to their advantage. Weka, or Wekabyte, is 10 to the 30th power. So we've future-proofed our file systems that anybody could ever use. Epic speed, epic performance, at any scale, similar to the future proofing that Google's done for the whole world search engine. And like I said before, we solve the world's big problems, the world's fastest file system. And for those not in IT and not familiar with that, you may say, what does that mean to you? Well, when you run an application, or specifically a modern application where speed matters and time is money is time, some of the vendors that you buy your servers from and your applications from, whether it be HPE, Dell Technologies part of, and with EMC part of that, Cisco, Supermicro, Ventara, Lenovo, basically all the potential server vendors you would buy your applications and roll a turnkey solution with, not only are OEMs, but most of those are investors as well. They believe. They like it being agnostic, they like it being open, they like it being deployed on core or in the cloud. In fact, you can deploy it and provision it right off AWS in literally seconds right away. You might say, well, there are other file systems, and they've been around for years. What does the impact of having the world's fastest file system and epic performance at any scale do for us? Well, what's the so what? Well, imagine you're in genomics. You're able to do 10 times the number of genomes per given day. That leads to a cure. That's huge impact. Imagine you're at a company that's making cures for multiple sclerosis. That's huge. Or working with the federal government or in the scientist on giving us a cure and a treatment and a vaccine for COVID. That matters 10 times the performance. If you're running SaaS in the financial space, 10 times the performance. If you're running Splunk for analytics, absolutely 10 times the performance. Huge change. In the financial analytics sector, if you work with tech files and you're a quant, have a competitive advantage at 10 times the overall analytics you can go through to make better trades and take care of your customers, obviously. And speaking of customers, also in the financial space, if you're in the credit card provider company, you have nanoseconds to determine whether it's a fraud, whether the person going to CVS is doing it maliciously and with fraud, or just a regular customer behavior. And you have nanoseconds to determine that because you don't want to disappoint your customer's experience, obviously. And that's a difference maker for credit card companies. Speaking of that, some of the financials actually have up to $1 million a day in fines, sometimes higher than that, if they aren't able to show all full regulations and full clarity for full compliance across their operations. Weka helps solve those problems. Also, in the AI space, it's a great space drafting behind NVIDIA. They're making a huge impact. The whole GPU world, is doing incredible impacts. They're moving the world from a semi-autonomous to a fully autonomous driving and do things with smart factories we can only dream of only decades ago. And also on the storage side, the chip makers, the memory makers, the DRAM makers are investing and working with reference architectures, obviously with the new modern file system, the world's fastest file system, Weka. And actually Seagate's an investor and Western Digital's an investor and have put their reference architectures to help us to an advantage. Huge, huge advantages. And as you go to 100 gig and above networks, people like Mellanox, now part of NVIDIA, has actually had a nice investment, actually a customer of Weka. So huge amounts of involvement. So we solve the world's big problems. We make business impact. Hopefully I've explained the so what. And for me personally, I've been in the business around storage and growth companies for the last 32 years plus. I want to head to 600% growth on the customer side, and thank you for that, but we're helping OEMs. We're helping our VAR ecosystem and growing that tremendously. Large multi-petabyte customers, we eat basically petabytes for lunch. And then of course on as many net new customers as can, because it's epic performance at any scale. And we want to head towards an IPO and satisfy our customers and the public markets. Hope that helps explain why Weka from Ken Growe.